Box Nation got the massive pay-per-view from Las Vegas this Saturday, the moment, Mayweather Maidana. But there's quite a lot of British interest on that card as well, with Amir Khan, Collazo, and also Anthony Ogogo and Ashley Fearfane fighting. Starting off with the Brits, how do you see them doing this Saturday?
Well, funny enough, I think Fearfane's once again up against it. Seems that his best pal, Mayweather, does him absolutely no favours. But then Mayweather as a manager, promoter and matchmaker is absolutely rubbish. On a par with Nassim Hamid and on a par with Mike Tyson all those years ago when they started their own promotional companies. If you remember, Mayweather managed to get Badu Jack knocked out when Badu Jack only had to sit on his bum and he would get a WBC eliminator with James DeGale. And he certainly isn't looking after Ashley Fearfane. Fearfane's got, I think, a really hard fight again on Saturday. Last time he fought on a Mayweather bill, it was a hard bill. Fearfane will do well to come through. Ogogo will come through because the guy he's fighting, if he's still fighting, John El Tapia, doesn't step up very well. So Ogogo will come through and it'll be fantastic for Ogogo. I just hope there's enough in there to watch him. And it's Khan and Collazo. Once again, Khan's been forced, I think, to take a really... And it's forced is the right word. Forced to take a really hard fight. He's been led to believe that if he looks good against Collazo, he'll get a fight with Mayweather. The problem is that by Khan's own admission, that wouldn't be until May next year. And I think that would be 2 fights in 24 months or 25 months. I just don't think that's busy enough. So I see there being a problem. So if he beats Collazo, my opinion is Khan needs to fight in November, December. And if he fights in November, December, it has to be a guy as good as Collazo, and he could get beat or look bad, in which case Mayweather could once again pull the rug from under his feet. I think Khan will win. I think we're going to see a new Khan. I don't think it's rubbish. I think the stuff we've been hearing from Khan and Virgil Hunter about the enforced break from boxing and the time they've spent in the gym, I think it's all true. I think we're going to see a new Khan. I think we're going to see Khan do a good job on Collazo and earn himself, in theory, the right to get a ticket in the Mayweather sweepstakes. And, by the way, he won't be walking away with $1.5 million for fighting Mayweather like Maidana's managed to get himself paid.
Yeah, definitely. And another one of, you mentioned... Mayweather's not doing Ashley Fearfane any favours, and another one who was seen as a prodigy of Mayweather and being an ex-Floyd Mayweather was Adrien Broner, and he lost to Maidana, of course, but is on this card also. How do you see him bouncing back from that loss?
Well, listen, Carlos Molina's a good enough fight for him because, you know, Molina's got form. There's traceability in the sense that he lost to Khan. Who knows, his last fight as well, 15, 16 months ago. And Broner can put himself back in whatever you call contention. Will Broner fight Sean Porter or Keith Thurman in the next 12 months? I very much doubt it. We have a proliferation of titles and a proliferation of alternative routes for people to take that really fighters don't have to go down, you know, any particular route. Will Lucas Matisse move up and fight Broner? I doubt it. Could there be a Broner-Maidana rematch? Yeah, that's a possibility. Will there be a Khan-Broner fight? I doubt it. There's plenty of other fighters out there. But I really like Broner. I think he's entertaining. I think he's a better fighter than people give him credit for. Because just because people dislike him, I think they tend to forget that, you know, he's a good fighter. You know, he did some good stuff at lightweight. Perhaps he will decide that welter's not his division. Who knows? But listen, I hope he comes back because, you know, he's a kind of character. He's a good character. Yeah. You know, listen, I like Keith Thurman, nice guy. I like Sean Porter, nice guy. But combined, their personality falls short of half of Broner.
No, definitely. And, of course, the main event, Floyd Mayweather versus Marcos Maidana. How do you see that one going? Is it only going one way?
I think it's only going one way, but I'd be amazed if it's as simple as we all think it's going to be. I can't see Floyd losing. He'd have to be hit flush on the chin and not recover and be out cold. Because if he gets dropped, as long as he can get up, inside the count of 10, he will do enough in that round to survive, and then will go into what Mayweather does best, that defensive role. However, I don't see it being the walkover that Guerrero was. I don't see it being the walkover that the Alvarez fight was. And it's interesting because is Maidana as good as Guerrero or Alvarez? Well, it's unlikely, but he does things differently to those two. One of the things he does, and people forget this, and you've only got to look at the Broner fight. You know, Mayweather always goes on about no one's found the blueprint. Well, in all fairness, Broner is a mini Mayweather. Everything he tries to mimic what Mayweather does. So his head rolls, his movement, the way he moves his feet, the way he throws his punches. Well, and I would argue that Broner is as fast as Mayweather. Maybe not a lot in it. You know, what Maidana did is he managed to get his feet that bit closer. He managed to throw straight shots at the chest instead of trying to hit the stomach, instead of trying to hit the chin, instead of trying to hit the head. And what he really did, and this is the key, is when he threw his straight right hand, when he threw the big right hand, he tucked up brilliantly. So there was nothing to counter. There were lots of pictures of him doing that, where his left hand is protecting most of his chin and his head, and his right hand's fully extended. In fact, maybe overextended. But you can overextend if you're protecting yourself. You just can't overextend if your left hand is down by your waist, because then you can leave yourself off balance and open. I think he might cut the ground down. I think he might make Floyd really think, like Ricky did. So we forget, because Ricky got stopped, and because the stoppage was so dramatic, we forget that Ricky was in that fight, going through 7 or 8 rounds. He was there. I'm not saying he was winning. He was in that fight. Guerrero was never in the fight. Cotto was in the fight for a couple of rounds at the end of the fight. Alvarez was never in the fight. Again, what any judges say, or that disgraceful decision, one score that night. Ricky was in that fight. He moved his feet, he used his brain. I tell you what, I think we might be assuming Maidana is going to fall into all sorts of traps. He won't. He won't buy into any of the traps. Guerrero, in old-fashioned money, was a disgrace. Guerrero would have, in the old days in Britain, the referee would have pulled Guerrero aside after 3 rounds and said, unless you start trying, son, you're out. Because he was getting about 6 million, no one was brave enough to say that. He was in disgrace. It looked to me like Alvarez was ready to burst into tears several times and pull a Duran no mas. This kid Maidana won. He may get stopped, but like Ricky, I think he'll get to. I think he will. I think he'll get to Mayweather, and I think he'll make it awkward and difficult. Mayweather might still win all 12 rounds, but they'll have to fight a little bit harder. They'll have to use his brain because he's got this ability, Maidana, to cut down ground and not leave himself open. He might walk onto a shot in the second round, but that could be less of a massacre than the Guerrero fight and the Alvarez fight.
Okay. And with all that being said, I mean, you still think Mayweather will come out on top? It's going to be a difficult night for Mayweather, possibly.
Absolutely. I think it'll be a difficult night, but he will come out on top.
Yeah. And with that being said, I think in the press conference this week earlier, Mayweather was saying, does anyone have the answer to the May Vinci Code? Do you think there's anyone out there that has the answers to beat Mayweather?
No, not at the moment, no. You know, 7 years ago, if he'd have fought Oscar De La Hoya 2 years earlier, Oscar De La Hoya would, because Oscar De La Hoya, you know, arguably could have nicked the decision. All those years ago, lightweight, Castillo definitely beat him in the first fight. It's a combination of pressure and it's pressure and organisation. You can't just run at him, which is what Ricky discovered at the end. And at the same time, you can't stand off too much, which is what the trap Alvarez fell into. And right now, Keith Porter would give him a chase. Furman wouldn't be busy enough, but both of those would be like rabbits in the headlights of a car on a road. I'm afraid they'd both freeze. Amir Khan will give him some problems with his speed and with his ability to box for a while. But no, unfortunately, if he sticks at welter, there's nothing out there in his next 4 fights, including this one, what will be his final 4 fights. There's nothing out there. If he starts thinking about making Golovkin drop down and he'll go up, that's slightly different because he can get clipped on the chin. But what the problem we've got, well, not the problem we've got, it's great for Mayweather, but it's not particularly good for us, is that we don't have a welterweight or a light welterweight who's a devastating puncher. Lucas Matisse is a devastating puncher who was fully exposed by John Molina last week. And that's what we're missing. If there was a welterweight that could clip you, if there was a Valero at welterweight, if there was a Kovalev at welterweight, a Golovkin at welterweight, no matter how raw they are, then I'd say he's the man. But there's not at the moment.
No, definitely. And I mean, one thing we could all expect is a great pay-per-view that night. It's on Box Nation, of course. What time does it all kick off on Box Nation?
Well, we're going to start at midnight with some bits and pieces. I think a bit of reruns of the Access All areas. We're going to go, I think the fight starts at 2 with Mayweather on last. My gut feeling is sometime between 4:45 and 5:30, Mayweather in the ring. That's my gut feeling. Could be a bit earlier. I wouldn't have thought it'd be too much later. And of course, if you're in America, you're paying $70-odd. It's a lot of money.
No, definitely. Well, it's been great talking to you, Steve. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
And hopefully speak to you soon ahead of some big domestic fights coming up in the UK.
Anytime you like. Thanks very much indeed.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, boss.